Welcome to Season 2 of Under the Sisterhood. Over the 31 days of March, we are celebrating 31 Women's March of Voices during Women's History Month. We will have intimate conversations that will uncover each woman's superpower and find out how they use these superpowers to help other women. That's 31 days honoring 31 women and their superpowers. This is a podcast to celebrate women and all that they do in our world. I'm Elizabeth Elfenbein. Let's get under the hood. Today we're celebrating Tania Carpio, a daughter, sister, friend, teacher, creative, certified breathwork coach, and sound healer in training. Tania is passionate about helping people live their best lives and helping them feel welcomed, included, and taken care of. She believes in choosing kindness and in digging deep to discover who we are at our core, to live our most authentic lives. I'm so thrilled to be celebrating Tania during Women's History Month. Welcome, Tania.
Hi, Elizabeth. It's good to be here with you.
Oh, I'm so excited to be celebrating you. This is such a profound month, Women's History Month. We as women are making history every single day, and it's really interesting to call attention to different people. So I couldn't be more delighted to be celebrating you today. So why don't we get going?
Let's do it.
Great. So I think, if you don't mind, we'd love to go on a journey with you. If you could share your story.
Ooh. Oh, I was actually thinking about my story earlier today, and I'm looking back, and it has been such a journey. One that has had a lot of happy aha moments, but there have definitely been some painful moments along the way. Um, the other day, I read a quote by Mark Manson that says that there are only two outcomes in life. Either you choose who you are or it will be chosen for you. And I think for the majority of my life, I actually let people choose for me who I was. And so it has been quite a journey to go back to who I am at my core. Um, Ever since I was little, I could tell that I was different. I didn't know exactly what made me different. I just knew that I was, and that in turn, I was being treated differently because of that. Now I look back and I can clearly see that there was nothing wrong with me, and I can praise the little quirks, and the weirdness and the awkwardness. But when you're a kid, that's hard. Like, you don't understand, and other kids don't understand. And then as I started getting older, then I started getting labels put on me. I was too serious. I was too sensitive. I was too awkward. I was too for the world. And it was hard. It was very hard because I didn't understand why people were giving me these labels, especially because I was trying so hard to fit in. And no matter what I was trying to do, it just wasn't working. I was just the different one, the other one. Um, and I think that's when I started to mask myself. And when I decided that, not that I decided, but I feel that that's when I started letting people decide who I was, rather than me saying, this is who I am, this is who I believe to be. Um,
How
and
old were you then?
so I
How old were you
started,
then when you started to mask yourself?
it was in my early teens, so it was very young.
Mm,
I actually found my diary from those years, and I
wow.
started very early. It's like I started masking and like not being happy with who I am and noticing the differences very early. So when I said that for most of my life, other people have decided who I am, like it started really early. Um, so once I figured out that that I was not going to fit in, so I decided, okay, if I am too serious, then I'm going to go the complete opposite way. I'm going to be super silly. I'm never going to take a serious picture. If I'm too sensitive, then I'm going to bottle it all in. Um,
Mm,
and as much as I was trying, I was still not fitting in. I was still not, it was not working. Like I was working so hard and it wasn't working. Um, but I felt that masking myself and hiding all those things that at the time I felt were wrong with me was better than letting them out. So I kept doing it. And I did it for years and years and years. And it was a lonely road. I had friends, but were they really friends? They didn't know who I was. They knew the person that I have turned myself into for their sake. Um, and so high school and college were very lonely, and I wanted a break. I had one of those moments where I was like, I just want to go far away where nobody knows me and just have a break and just basically start over somewhere else. And so I found myself on a tiny little island in the South Pacific called Palau. And before I got there, in college, my degree had been in social work. I've always known that my passion is for social work and to help people and things like that. So I did my undergrad in social work, and I found um, this job there that I was going to be a social worker at the school where I was going. But when I get to Palau, 24-hour travel, it took 24 hours to get there. I get there, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, we really, really need a fourth grade teacher, and you're the only one available. And it was like, oh my God. Like, I'm halfway around the world. I can't go home because I don't have money to pay for a return ticket right now. So I stepped into it. And so there I was. No, I had about 5 days to learn how to be a teacher. So it's like trial by fire, basically. And I walk into a classroom, and it's 21 fourth graders, with the majority of them boys. And so it was a very rambunctious class. And I cried a lot the first few weeks. It's like I cried so much, and it was so hard. But eventually I got the hang of it, and I really started to love it. Like, I really, really loved it. I fell in love with the kids. I fell in love with teaching them. I fell in love with the families that I was working with. And so I could see the positive impact I was having on these kids. I could see the positive impact that I was having on the families. And it was just such a good experience. Um, and so when I came back to New York a year later, I was like, this is what I'm going to do. And so I
Mm.
dove at first into my teaching career, like head first into it.
So I want to, before you get into your teaching career, I want to take a step back a little, because you talked about masking. So then you went to Palau, you went to this remote island, and you lived there for a year. You taught, so you likely, and we'll talk about unmasking. I guess the question I have, and I can't remember, Tanya, were you born in? Were you? What age did you come to the U.S. and where from? And were any of the things that affected you based on cultural things from your your place of origin?
Oh, that's a great question. I was actually born in Honduras, but my mom's family has been here in New York since she was in her teens. So every summer when school was over for us, we would come up to New York from Central America to spend time with my mom's side of the family. Eventually, when I was about to turn 14, which is around the same time when I first started masking
That's exactly what I
In
wanted to.
Costa
Yep.
Rica.
Hmm.
So I started masking in Costa Rica, and then my parents decided that they just wanted us to move here permanently. Um, and so I moved to New York a month before I turned 14. And so I had already started masking in Costa Rica, turning myself into this person that I felt my friends wanted me to be, needed me to be. And then I get here. I barely speak the language. I had some basic English taught in school in Costa Rica, but I couldn't communicate. I was the new kid. And again, I was in another situation where I. fit in, you know. Um,
Makes
so
sense.
yeah,
Makes
the
total sense.
masking, yeah. Yeah, the masking continues. Like I would hide the things that were about me. Like I was trying to fit into this new culture, this new school system, this new everything. Um, and the culture shock was huge because not only was I coming from a country where it's just a lot smaller, a lot more community based, a lot more family centered, where the main language is Spanish, but I was also coming from, and this is going to maybe sound a little pretentious, but I have been raised in private school system. Like
Mm-hmm.
my whole up to age 14, I have been in private schools. And then I come to New York and I go into public school system. And it's just this culture shock of just everything, and I wanted to fit in with these kids. I came in when the school year was almost over, so everybody already had their friends. So yeah, it was definitely hard. And I
But
think now that I think about it, that experience of being the new kid in school definitely helped my teaching career and why I dove headfirst into it.
oh, I can imagine. But I can imagine just, and I was just curious to go back because describing that feeling of feeling different in America versus feeling different in, say, Costa Rica or Honduras. I mean, it's two different things because culturally you could be experiencing something that's quite unique. Actually, I guess in any of the countries you'd be experiencing something that's unique. But we know the social dynamics of growing up in the US is quite challenging. And it's probably back to your comment about the communities you grew up in were more family centered, very community oriented, which would tend to be more open to being a little different and a little, I think Austin Weird's fantastic. Because it brings out your creativity side. I consider
Yeah,
myself Elizabeth Weird. So I think that's a wonderful quality. But when you're a kid, it's not such a wonderful quality, let's be honest. And
yeah,
so
exactly. Yeah.
so
So it was
so
hard, definitely
mhm.
hard.
So,
Yeah.
so you go off to this country because the reason why I'm asking, I wanted to go back and connect the dots with that
Mhm.
because it could be a cultural thing, it could be that you just think differently, which is a fantastic quality. But usually, as I said, I think those qualities tend to be recognized as wonderful things when we're adults, not when we're kids, because you want to be like everybody else. But you go off to this country, you graduate, you go off and you're thrown into becoming a teacher. And were you able at that time, in on that small island, to unmask yourself at that point? Would you say that you were no longer living? Because them throwing you into that job opportunity feels like they put you in another position where someone was making that decision for you. You know what I mean?
Yes, 100%. It was, like you said, somebody else deciding who I was going to be. Um, I think to a certain extent, there were parts of me where I was able to show up more genuinely um, in my personal life. There was a very big diving and scuba diving and water culture because I mean, like, it's an island, so that's what it could be. And it's like everybody was expecting me to be part of that. And I think one of the ways where I showed authentically is that I was able to set boundaries as to what I wanted to do and what I didn't want to be involved in my personal life. But like you mentioned, I had gone there with an idea of what I was going to do, what I wanted to do. And then all of a sudden, I have 5 days to fit into this role that was put on me. And I couldn't say no because it's like it took 24 hours to get there. Like it was like three different flights. And it cost like $2,000 back in 2007. So it's just like I had just graduated from college. I didn't have another $2,000 to turn right back. So yeah, like you said, it was chosen for me again. And it's because back then when I was younger, I decided that who I was not good enough. So I was gonna follow the suggestions of everybody else and what everybody else was telling me that I needed to be. However, if I'm to be honest, I think that that decision that was made for me at that moment was the right decision. Like I can see how all these other decisions about who I am, how they have been detrimental to who I am and like my core and me showing up. But I can see how somebody else making the decision for me to be a teacher was the absolute right choice. It was what I needed to be.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because as I'm hearing you speak, I can't help but think in a way it forced you to show up in extemporaneously. You didn't have time to plan or respond. You just had to show up. And when you just have to show up, you don't have as much time to put on your mask. You have
Yeah.
to kind of show up authentically because it happens so quickly. So I think what it did was it gave you a platform to thrive in, which you didn't expect. You maybe
Yes.
expected one thing and these other things happened. And so I think you're right. I think it was a good thing, whether you want to be a teacher for the rest of your life or not. I mean, is not, but I think it taught you very quick life lessons. And it did allow you probably to unmask, even if someone else made the decision for you. It allowed you to go in and show up, and that's huge, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like in a way, it also made me realize that social work was not the thing for me. And it made me wonder, was that another decision that I felt I needed to take? Because my aunt was a social worker, and when I was in college, she kept telling me about how wonderful social work was. So did I make the decision to become a social worker because that's what I really wanted, or because somebody else planted that idea on me? So it's like the whole time it's been me not trusting myself and trusting that I know what I want. And so, when I came back to New York, I did make the conscious decision to remain in teaching. Um, and I dove headfirst into it. Like I had loved it so much in Palau and I had enjoyed it too so much that I wanted to have the same feeling here. And so I dove headfirst. I made my whole identity being a teacher. Um, I was the first one in, the last one out. During my free time, I was researching new ideas of what to do. I was doing professional development of my own. I was doing all the things, like literally all the
Amazing.
things.
That's amazing.
And I became really good at being a teacher. Like I'm not, I'm gonna toot my own horn.
Please
Like I'm
toot
an
your own horn.
excellent teacher.
I bet
Like
you
I
are.
am I am really, really good. And it's not something that just I think it is true. Like my colleagues tell me all the time. The parents are always gushing about me. In the school that I'm currently in, um, I've been promoted every 2 years, given a new title because I'm that good and because I demonstrate that I'm worth it. The problem is that I made teaching my all. Like that's all I did. I was not making time for myself outside of work. I was not looking into my passions. I literally forgot the things that I like to do because I only had time for work. And I really was enjoying it. So I was okay with it. I really was thriving. Um, every promotion that I got to work was because I initiated it, because I told them that I wanted it. So I was progressing at my own desire, my own will, my own doing. And then COVID hit. And like, I feel that when COVID hit, as a collective, we were all forced to look inward and to really look at the things that matter.
Mm.
And unfortunately, that's when I realized that I had been lying to myself and telling myself that I was happy when I really wasn't. I was happy with work. I was happy with what I was doing at work, but in my personal life, I was not happy. I had really forgotten who I was because I had made this field and what I was doing for my kids my whole identity. So I have been lying to myself. It's like you can't really be happy and truly happy on who you are if you are living your whole life for somebody else. And mind you, I'm a firm believer of helping others. I believe at my core that my mission on earth is to help other people, to help them live better lives. But I can't help other people live better lives and like live their most authentic if I'm not doing that. If I only have a one track mind. And that's what I was doing. Like I wasn't doing anything else. So thankfully, I started working with a very good therapist that was asking all the right questions, you know. And one day she asked me, "So, what do you like to do during your free time?" And I could not answer that question. Elizabeth, I
Mm,
didn't know. I didn't know. Like, I had no idea what it was
mm,
that I liked doing in my free time because what was I doing during my free time? I was doing work related things, you know, that's all I was doing. And so it was it was a wake up moment. It was very eye opening about how I really had lost myself in the pursuit of something else that I loved. But the one thing that I loved was just one little part of me. And I felt that most of me was somewhere that I didn't know. And so thankfully, she, I've told her this, so I don't mind saying this. Like, she was very pushy. And so she pushed me to try new things. Um, and a lot of the things that I was trying were not sticking. I was doing a lot of very physical things. I was trying Muay Thai, which I really enjoyed. And I tried rock climbing, which I also enjoyed. But they were not things that I could feel I could do long term. It was more like, oh yeah, I can do this for a bit, but that's it. However, I was still very proud of myself because I was making the time for myself outside of work. I was trying to explore the things that I liked. And it was a lot of trial and error, but I was so proud of myself. I was so happy. I was going back to the things that, you know, to try to find who I was again. Um, and yeah, it was so interesting about how I was slowly starting to come back to the person I used to be. Um, and so then this summer is when I feel like things started to just change at like a drastic, dramatic pace. Um, I met somebody who really challenged me in the questions that he asked. And so one day he asked me, "Are you living the life that you envision for yourself?" And once
mm,
again, I was stumped. I was like, initially I wanted to say yes, because I mean, like I had a job that was paying the bills that I enjoyed. Um, I had a roof over my head. I had finally found a group of friends that I really enjoy being around. And with my therapist, I had been able to discover that I'm a highly sensitive person, which explains all the weirdness, you know, and all the awkwardness and all the sensitivity and everything from before. So technically on paper, I was doing great, but I wasn't feeling great. I still felt like something was missing.
Can I just jump in there? I think that's so interesting. And I think this is really important for women to hear around the world. I think, first of all, I want to say I love the fact that you acknowledged how proud you've been at each stage of the things going on in your life and really owning that, feeling good, because I think women tend not to. But I think also owning and saying everything on paper looks good. I can attest to that, man. I had the perfect paper and my insides, might have felt empty. So that's not unusual. So I think that you should like just even acknowledging that. And I often say to you, like you're at an age where impacting this now is just going to make your future so amazing. So keep going on about that. So you were saying that everything on paper looked good, but you weren't feeling it.
Yeah, I still felt like something was missing. You know, I
Mm,
still felt like I was thriving at work. Um, by this school year, I had gotten um, my newest promotion. It was like a position that I suggested was needed, and my boss saw the need for it because I presented a great case. And so I was thriving at work. I was doing all these things, and had also started trying new things, but there was still a part of me that I knew was missing. But as again, I have buried it under so many layers of the things that I had to do, the things that people needed me to be, that I didn't know what it was. And so I turned to others, this was the one time that I did want to hear what other people's opinions was, what they thought. And so I started asking the people who had known me the longest, the ones who know me the best, and um, they started reminding me of who I was before I lost myself. They reminded me about how in high school and college I had taken ceramics classes and how I had loved that. They reminded me how my original plan when I was little is I wanted to be an interior decorator, and then when I was in college, my minor for a long time was graphic design. Um,
Mm.
it reminded me um, that at work I was the happiest when I was creating some art with my students or for my students. And then, like, the most telling was my sisters telling me that they used to call me Flower Island Child because I used to be such a free spirit. They used to call
Oh,
me that I was little granola, a little bit granola. Um,
oh, that's so
and so they
sweet.
used to, yeah. So, like, from the three of us, apparently I was the most free spirited one of the three and the most willing to all these things. And when all these people were describing this person, I had no idea who she was. Like, it was like they were talking to me about somebody else, somebody I had no idea who it was. But then something inside me woke up. It's like they showed me a mirror and I started to see myself again. And so I
That's
started
so
making little
beautiful.
changes.
That's beautiful.
Yes, it really was. And, and I couldn't have done it without their help. I am very lucky that I have people in my life that are not afraid to call me out and point me in the right direction. And so that's why I went to them, because I knew they were going to be brutally honest at times. So they started to show, put the mirror in front of me where I started to see who I was, who I used to be. And so I started to make little changes. It started with truly and fully embracing my high sensitivity. In the past, I had stayed in social situation and gone to events and things like that out of duty and out of feeling like that's what it was expected of me, and stayed way longer than I felt comfortable, you
Mm.
know, way longer than my sensory, things could handle. And I was ending overwhelmed. I was just not okay with that. So that's where I started setting boundaries. I started saying no more often to social situations. And the interesting thing is that because I was saying no more often, I was able to be more present to the times where I did attend, the times where I did go out, the times where I stayed longer. I could feel myself being more present and being able to show up more authentically to those times. And then I started to change the way I was dressing. I had turned into like very dark colors all the time, but I started incorporating more color into my wardrobe, more flowy. Started wearing more dresses. I started wearing different fabrics, and I was loving it. I felt like I was coming back to myself. Recently, I added tinsel to my hair because I thought that would be fun. Um, and so I started doing all these little things. I started to incorporate more art at work and all these things. Um, and I was starting to show up more, you know. And I started to embrace the parts of me that are a little woo woo, like my sisters say. Um, I started to embrace the fact that I believe in breath work, that I believe in meditation, that I believe in the power of sound healing. And I started to dive into that and learning about that. Um, one day I posted on Instagram that my dream in life was to wear a white dress with a flower crown and just frolic in the meadows and, embrace my woo-woo-ness. And the interesting thing is that the people who started replying started saying, yeah, I actually see that happening. I actually see you doing that. So in me starting to peel away those layers and, being willing and more able to go back to those things, people started to see that in me. That because I started to show up, people started to embrace that side of me. And it just felt so good. Um,
So I have a
and so
question
now,
about that, though. I have a
yes.
question about that, and
Mhm.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but so people started to embrace you. At what point were you embracing yourself? Because I think this is a huge message for women out there. We are constantly looking for other validation, for people to embrace us. Now, hearing your story, it would make sense to want to be embraced is different than validation, because there's a love, there's a support system, what have you. But what point did you start embracing yourself? Because I think I want women to understand it's so important that we embrace ourselves, right?
Yeah. I think it started to happen the moment I decided to trust myself. The moment I decided I know who I am, I just need to peel away the layers.
I love that.
Trust that on my core that I knew that I had just let other people decide for me, but I knew, like, I know who I am. Like, I know it. I had just forgotten. And I think that at one point we also have to be gentle with ourselves and give ourselves self compassion because I was so hard and critical on myself and I was not trusting myself. And then the moment that I decided I'm going to trust myself because I know who I am, things started to change. And because I was trusting myself and I was trusting that what the person I was putting out there for people to see was who I really was, then people embraced that. But that's because I decided that I knew who I was, that I knew my worth, that I knew deep down. That's the moment when I started to embrace myself, when I started to trust that I knew. And because I trusted myself, then people saw that and they started appreciating that. So yeah, and going back to like the changes I started making, like the most exciting for me was that I realized that the piece that was missing was the artistic side, being able to create with my hands. So I signed up for a stone carving class. And I feel that aside from the fact that he's been very therapeutic and very much like it's filling my heart, it has also been a very big life lesson. Because, before I start a project, the studio um, where I'm doing the classes, they have hundreds and hundreds of stones just in big bats and laying on the floor. And I have to stand there in the middle of all these rocks, waiting for a stone to call me. And people always tell me, how do you know which one to pick? And it's like, the stone knows I'm coming and it will call me. Like it just is at that kind of relationship with like I'm just in tune with what is going to happen and it happens. But it usually takes a while because there's so many and I'm looking through all of them. But then when I finally find a stone that I'm going to work with, I get so excited because to everybody else it looks like just a piece of rock. But even at its raw state, I already know what it's going to look like at the end. I already have a picture of what it's going to look like. So I
Mm.
bring it back to my stone carving table and I grab my tools and I start scraping and chiseling and, just working and carving on it. And it's hard. It's like usually my hands get numb and I get frustrating because something is not working the way I need it to work, or I don't have the right tool for the piece that I'm trying to chip off. And it's hard and it's frustrating. But slowly but truly, all the excess starts going off and it starts falling away, and I sweep it off and I brush off my stone and can I start seeing the shape. And slowly but truly, I end up with an amazing piece of art that I created. And I feel like that's what's happening with my life right now. That's what I'm doing with my life. Like I am chipping away all the little pieces, all the extra, all the things that don't serve me, that are just there doing, I don't want to say nothing because they have served me up to one point, but it's just a lot of extra stuff that is just piled on top of this beautiful piece of art that is in there, that I know that is there.
Mm.
So I'm chiseling away. I'm chiseling away and I'm showing authentically and I'm showing up, and it's just I'm finding my stone carving like the physical representation of what is happening inside right
So it's, I'm like saying metaphor, metaphor,
now.
metaphor, because it's parallel to what you are going. In a way, chipping away is taking off the mask and getting down to the core. You're chip, 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 and the result is being your true, authentic form of art yourself, your form of self-expression, we'll say. But that's beautiful, Tanya. What a story.
Yeah.
Wow. And also, just to be that deep in thinking about that, like to sort of go on that journey and acknowledge these painful points in life. Everybody goes through challenges. We all have different forms of trauma, intergenerational trauma that happens in many different ways. It can happen just in your community because you're different. Like I was terribly bullied as a little girl because I was different. So I can so relate to that. And I don't know if I put on the masks, but if I did all the same things, but I can, like, I understand showing up the way society system suggests we need to show up. And then you can add a layer of family, you can add a layer of community, all these different things that sort of drives certain aspects of us, makes decisions for us. And so now, having gone through that, where you've basically put on all these layers of other people's and society's sort of, I don't know what I would call it, sort of the coats that they suggest you wear, you're now taking those coats off, those layers off, and you're coming back as who you are, your authentic self. And I'm sure you're finding a lot of newness in that, right?
Absolutely. It's just I feel like I'm rediscovering, and in the rediscovering there's so many little things about me that I'm starting to love that I
Mm.
didn't know were there before. It's just like it's falling in love with myself again. So yeah, there's a lot of newness, a lot of excitement. There's still some times where I was like that I feel the need and the impulse to mask again, but then I remind myself the journey that I'm on. And something that I keep reminding myself is that when I allow myself to unmask and I show up authentically, I open the door for other people to do the same, you know,
Mm.
because in normalizing me showing up as I am is going to make it easier for other people to do the same, because it's they see how happy I am and how life is so much better when you really show up as you truly are. How Because masking is exhausting. It's
I
so
can't.
so exhausting. And so when you start taking the mask off and you're like freer and happier, and other people start seeing that, in a way you give them permission to do the same. So yeah.
That's beautiful. And what a journey. I mean, what such a positive way to go through a challenge and figure it out, the puzzle of your life, and you're figuring it out. And I think that that's only going to bring you so much joy. And I think while you might enjoy the stone cutting now, I'm just saying this as a creative person, that might just be one I don't want to call modality, one medium you work in. And maybe that was the medium that cracked wide open the metaphor of what you were physically, how you're manifesting internally. You know what I'm saying? So you had these things, and it's really interesting. I mean, wow, I didn't know what to expect with this conversation. So I don't know if there's any more you want to talk about with your journey, or if we're good to go on to the next question.
I think we're good to go on to the next
Okay,
question.
great. So with that, I mean, you're on this journey, you're doing amazing things with your life. You see yourself, which is wonderful, and love yourself. What would you say your superpowers are, Tanya? And I know you have many.
Oh, yeah. I will also say I have a lot of superpowers. I think one of the ones that I'm most proud of is my willingness to go deep into my psyche and to learn about what needs to be changed and then doing the work. Um, Once I know something needs to change, whether it's in me as a person or, work or anything, I work hard to get it and I am relentless at getting it. So I definitely feel like my willingness to dig deep and to see what needs to change and to then work hard to get to the other side.
Mm.
Definitely something that I love about myself.
Plus the determination in that. That's amazing. I mean, the determination and the consistency, just consistently doing the work, that
Yes.
steadiness. That's a fantastic quality. And that's, what made you such a good teacher is like you have to be
Yeah.
at it all the time. And so when you're doing any of that self-work, that's a great superpower. What's the next one?
Uh, I would say being creative, 100% being creative. Um, I thrive when I'm being creative, and like the what I create is pretty fantastic and fabulous.
Mm,
I'll give one example. At school right now, my students decide were very interested in boats and like learning about boats. So I turned our dramatic play area into this elaborate seascape scene with like mountains and boulders and lighthouse, and we have a boat where
oh,
the kids can get in, and there has that
oh.
sail. um and so everybody who walks by the classroom, they're like flabbergasted when they see it because it took a long time and it's pretty elaborate, but I definitely thrive on being creative, and that's definitely a superpower. I think another superpower is that I am loyal. I
Mm.
am loyal, but not to the point where I keep giving people chances if they had shown me that it's not worth it. So I am loyal to the people who show me loyalty as well. And so I'm a great friend, I'm a great sister, I'm a great daughter. And yeah, loyalty, and like I am caring and I am kind. But like you mentioned, I'm also very determined and hard worker. So I think those are definitely my superpowers.
And those are a nice combination of hard and soft skills, like that determination, that
Mhm.
strength, that inner strength to keep you going, and just be consistently doing it. For some reason, I'm struggling with a word that my daughter was describing about me, because I'm very consistent. I go out and I methodically do the things. And by the way, it makes me so happy because it's all about self-care. But I think that that's really interesting, the determination, the consistency, but then with the soft skills of the caring, the kindness, and all of that. That's just wonderful. How would you say you're using your superpowers to help other women?
Mm. I think with the caring and being kind, I'm always checking in on my friends. I'm making sure they are okay. Um, I feel that especially here in New York City, it's very easy to forget about people. It's very easy to be so wrapped up in your own life that you're not, that you forget that some people are going through things that you don't know nothing about. So I'm using my caring side and my kind side to make sure that the women in my circle are okay, and to, if there's anything I can do for them, to, to be there for them. And, right now, like part of the determination that you mentioned is that determination is what led to me being certified as a breathwork coach. And, now that I'm becoming certified as a sound healer, I feel like at one point I'm going to be able to I already use breath work to help, the women in my family, but eventually I'm also going to use the sound healing to help the women in my family. So not just my family, like my earthly family. Um,
Mm.
I think it's like that determination to help myself and to find what has been able to heal me, and determination to self-care also helps me in wanting the women that I come across to have the same kind of peace, the same kind of balance.
And that's beautiful. I mean, once you get your sound healing, I'm going to be very curious to experience that with you. And of course, the breath work, it's amazing what it can do, how it can really change a really trying and anxious situation, just changing your dynamic with the breath work. So that's really a powerful way. And the way I would almost say it is it's like you're taking all your soft skills. Now you're learning these healing modalities. You healed yourself, and now you're going to be able to bring that to the women in your life, the sisters in your life, which is, the earthly sisters, the sisterhood. But that's just wonderful. So we're coming to a close now. This has been an amazing conversation. I'm curious, is there any message you'd like to leave? It's Women's History Month. You're making history and how you're reinventing yourself, you're finding yourself. What's the message you want to leave with women around the world, Tanya?
Hmm. I think the most important thing is that we need to trust ourselves. I think that we spend so much time letting society tell us who we are. We let everybody else dictate how we live our lives because of expectations and all these things. So the message I want to leave everybody, because it's what helped me, is to trust yourself. Trust that trust your gut, trust that you have been giving this power and this intuition and this magicalness in your womanhood to know what you need, to know how to make a better world, to make yourself better. So to trust, because I feel that when we trust ourselves, we are able to show up authentically. We're able to show up in the best way possible.
Mm, I have goosebumps. Thank you so much. This has been a wonderful conversation. Not surprised at all. Just so grateful to have this time with you. Thank you so much, Tanya, for joining us. And I'm so happy that we could celebrate you during Women's History Month.
Thank you. It has been a pleasure. And I'm telling you, you have definitely also been part of my journey. So I am glad that I'm able to now talk about it, of how, because you were there when I started the journey, so it has been great to be able to have you every step of the way so far.
Oh, I'm so honored to be part of it. And if I were to say anything to women around the world, I have had the utter pleasure of watching Tanya unmask and grow and realize her authentic self through the sister circles. She joined the under the sisterhood sister circles. And the most beautiful thing is just watching your determination and desire to change, and you could see it from meeting one to then to two, then to three. It was like you went home and you did the work. And some people will show up and they will do the quote unquote work. It's like when you say, "Oh, I'm listening," but are you hearing? And so you have to, if you're going to do the work, you have to dig deep. And
Mhm.
we have noticed, Amy, our facilitator and head of programming, we have noticed how you have dug deep and you really care. about the journey you're on and you want to affect change. So it's not like you're just doing it just to show up. You're doing it to affect change. And I think you made a comment just as you were closing. If we trust ourselves, we can show up as our authentic selves. And those are the things that make the world a better place. And that wasn't your exact way of phrasing making the world a better place, but that is what you said, is that's, and I think that's the truth. And it's about doing the work. So Tania, keep up the amazing work. And thank you. Thanks for listening to Under the Sisterhood. If you haven't already, please give us a quick rating and review on Apple or Spotify. And make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn so you can hear from more amazing women. This podcast is created and hosted by Under the Sisterhood LLC and Elizabeth Elfenbein, produced by Elizabeth Elfenbein and Zach Slaff, and edited by Zach Slaff. The music is by Ayla Schaefer, her song, Rose.